Hello and welcome back. This is Louise Wells from Mom's Maths Manual. I'm going to do the beginning steps of how to solve for x. We're going to work through the worksheet from A through to O. Begin with the beginning steps. The x can actually be y or z. It can also be A, B, or C. In fact, it can be any letter of the alphabet, but the most commonly used letters is X, Y, and Z, and A, B, and C. So let's take it away, and there I've got X plus 2 equals 4. I've got Y plus 2 equals 4. But in actual fact, what is X? X over here and Y over here is simply a box. Now in grade 1, 2, 3, and 4, perhaps you said box plus 2 equals 4. Well, we can't keep doing that because that's very baby-like. And so we start to assign letters. X plus 2 equals 4. So let's go through the beginning steps of what you actually did. In the beginning, you would simply look at the question and say, okay, well, what plus what gives me 4? And you're going to come up with 2. Yes, 2 plus 2 equals 4. So yes, the block equals 2. But now we're going to do it in a more mathematical way. And while we look at this, I'm going to try and explain the steps on how to do it. You should have learned some time ago that the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. That is what the equal sign actually means, is that the left is equal to the right. So by just looking at this equation, we can see that something plus 2 equals 4. Well, you know that it's going to be 2 because 2 plus 2 must give you 4. How do we write it mathematically, and how does it actually happen? So very simply, I'm going to rewrite this. X plus 2 equals 4. So I'm going to isolate the x. In other words, I'm going to put it by itself and I'm going to move all the numbers to one side. So I'm going to keep the x where it is. I'm keeping the equal sign and I'm keeping the 4. The moment that I take this across to the other side of the equal sign, it becomes negative 2. So what is 4 minus 2? It's 2. And therefore x equals 2. Right, looking at this again, we have the left-hand side over here, and the left-hand side is going to be equal to the right-hand side. Now, the other thing you need to know, if you do not see a plus sign in front of a number, or you see no sign in front of a number, you must assume that it is plus. So, I'm going to just put a plus sign in here. Okay, it means plus 40. And the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to isolate the x. And I'm going to put the numbers together. So I'm going to keep the x where it is, and I'm going to say plus. Now 40 plus 20 is 60. So that's telling you now that this side is equal to that side. But now we've got to move things around. Now just by pure deduction, you can see that the answer has to be 40, because the left side must equal the right side. But how do we write it? So what I do immediately is I keep the x, I isolate the x, I try and keep it by itself. And I move the 60 to the other side. The moment I move the 60 to the other side of the equal sign, I have to say minus 60. The sign changes. And here I've got x equals, and what is 100 minus 60? It's 40. So the value of x is 40. And if I went back to my question and I stuck 40 into the sum, I would have 40 plus 40 is 80 plus 20, giving me 100. That means that answer is correct. Let's have a look at this one. It's a little bit different. I have brackets plus 5 equals 20. Again, you know that the left-hand side is equal to the right-hand side. So the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to move the 5 across the equal sign. So I'm going to say 20, and this 5 now becomes minus 5. The brackets that's left is 10 plus x. I'm going to remove the brackets, and I'm going to finish the right hand side, and I'm going to have 15. Over here I've got 10 plus x. So what I do now is I'm going to move that across to the other side, and when I move it across to the other side, the 10 is going to change. So now I've got 15 and I've got minus 10 this side, giving me x is equal to 5. Let's test it. Well, I'm going to put 5 up there, and I'm going to say 10 plus 5 is 15, because we do brackets first, plus the 5, and there we go, 15 plus 5 is 20. So again, we've got the left hand side equal to the right hand side. I'm hoping as we go along you start to understand what we're doing. Again, I'm going to repeat myself, saying the left hand side must equal the right hand side, and I'm going to do one step at a time because I think it makes it easier for you. Immediately I'm going to finish. 7 times 7 is 49. I'm then going to rewrite what I've got here, but now you need to pay attention to the rules or properties of 0. Anything times 0 is going to be 0. So this bracket has absolutely no value whatsoever. So in actual fact, all I've got left here is x. X is 49. And if I go and put it back into the equation, I would put 49 here, and because it's x, it means both x's must have the same value. If I had x and y, then it means x would have one value and y would have another. But both letters are x, so it means that they are both x. So it's 0 times 49 plus 49 equals 7 times 7. Well, we know that that's now 0, and yes, 49 does equal 7 times 7. Right, let's have a look that we got here. The left hand side must equal the right hand side. It is very similar to the previous question. Immediately I'm going to see that this answer here is 0. Therefore x equals 64. If I take this out quickly and I substitute x, which is 64 in here, and I put 64 in here, it works. 0 times 64 is 0 plus 64 equals 64. That means x equals 64. Right, this example is pretty straightforward. I'm going to rewrite it. X plus 9 equals 15. Remember, the left hand side must equal the right hand side. So I'm going to isolate the x and keep it on its own. I'm going to move 9 across the equal sign, so it becomes 15 minus 9. Remember, if you don't see a sign over here, you must assume that it is positive. But here it's saying plus 9, and the moment you move it to that side, it becomes minus 9. And so what are we left with? We're left with x equals 6. I'm going to rewrite the question for us. So I'm going to say 100 minus x plus 10 equals 60. Step number 1, and I'm going to move one number at a time so that you don't get confused. So I'm going to keep the equal sign, keep 60 where it is, and I'm going to move the 10 across, making it minus 10. I'm then going to keep 100 minus x. I'm then moving back to this side, and I say 60 minus 10, and that's going to give me 50. I then have 100 minus x. Now I could move the x across to this side to make it positive, or I can move this across. Now the easiest way to do all of this is actually to keep things as positive as possible. So because I see that, I'm actually going to move the x across and make it positive, and I'm going to bring the 50 this side. So I'm going to say 100 minus 50. Remember that that is a positive. If you don't see a sign, you say that it's positive, and if you bring it to this side, it becomes negative. This is now negative x, and I'm taking it across to the other side, and I get positive x. So 100 minus 50 is going to give you 50. In other words, x equals 50. If we put it back into the equation and put 50 over here, let's test it. 100 minus 50 equals 50, plus 10 equals 60. Yes, x is 50. By now, I reckon you're getting this. So, and remember always BODMAS applies. BODMAS applies to everything. So, the first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to look at my BODMAS rules. And 1 times any number remains the same. So, if I've got 1 times 2 is 2. So, if I've got 1 times 10, it's 10, for example. So, if I've got 1 times x, my answer is still going to be x. It's going to stay unchanged, plus x unchanged, and this side I'm going to solve this and I'm going to get 20. So what actually have I got here? I've actually got 2x equals 20. Now immediately you guys know that the answer is going to be 10, but how do we write it mathematically? So now we're going to try and isolate, and when the number and the letter are standing side by side like that, it actually means multiplication. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to divide this number by 2, and I'm going to divide that number by 2. So now I'm going to say, because 2 divided by 2, it basically cancels, and into there once and into there 10. That's the easiest way I can explain it, and I'm left with x equals 10. If I substitute x into this equation, we can say 1 times 10 is 10, plus 10 equals 2 times 10, and we know that 2 times 10 is 20. So x definitely equals 10. Right, yet another example, and again I'm thinking you guys have got this by now. So I'm going to rewrite the question because it's just easier to rewrite what you've got. Please remember also the x must always be cursive. So immediately what I'm going to do is I'm going to take this, because it's minus x, and I'm going to take it to that side. That makes that a positive. I'm going to take this positive 3. Remember, if you don't see a sign here, it's positive. And I'm going to bring it to that side. So now I've got 12 minus 3 equals x. I'm doing a little bit of swapping from side to side. Remember, the left-hand side must always equal the right-hand side. So if I've got 12 minus 3, I get 9. And of course, x is just x. And I can write it like this. It doesn't change the value. I can now substitute 9 into there, and 12 minus 9 does give me 3. So that means x equals 9. This one might look a little bit complicated, but it isn't really. Immediately I'm going to rewrite it. 1 times x times 0, and immediately your brain should start thinking of something, equals 2 times 10. I'm going to work this immediately and solve for it. So over here I get 20. Then over here again, on this side, I've got 1 times x times 0. Now your properties of 0 and 1 must come to mind, and hopefully you realize immediately that this is actually going to equal to 0. So 0 plus x equals 20. Basically that means x equals 20. And let's put it into the equation and write 20 over here, 20 over here. 1 times 20 is 20, times 0 is 0, plus 20 does equal 2 times 10, because 20 equals 20. The left hand side definitely equals the right hand side. After looking at the previous question, I'm thinking you're thinking that this is incredibly easy. I'm just quickly going to rewrite it for us, and let's have a look. Now we've got the left hand side again, we've got the right hand side. Immediately you know that we have to isolate the x, so we're going to take the plus x and we move it to that side, and if we move the 8 across the equal sign, we've got to change the sign. So that leaves us with x equals 12 minus 8. So x equals 4. Let's put it into the equation. 4 plus 8 equals 12. So that means x equals equals 4. This question might look a little bit difficult, but it's not actually. Just look very carefully and pay attention to your properties of 0 and 1. So if you're looking at that, you'll see that 0 plus x is going to give you x. Because if you had 0 plus 1, the answer is going to be 1. But in this case, it's 0 plus x. So 0 plus x actually gives you x plus x equals 64. Now, just by looking at this, you all know that the answer is going to be 32. But you have to write this out mathematically. And how do you do that? Well, x plus x gives you 2 x's equals 64. Then we need to get rid of the 2 on this side. And if we're going to divide by 2 on this side, we're going to divide by 2 on this side. So we're going to say divided by 2, divided by 2. It's almost like cancelling in a way. Alright, 2 goes into 2 once, that's going to leave x. And 64 divided by 2 is 32. If I write 32 into my equation, 0 plus 32 gives you 32, and 32 plus 32 gives you 64. Almost at the end of my examples here for you. So I'm going to rewrite my equation. 100 minus x plus 10 equals 30. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to remove the brackets, and then I'm going to move the 10 to the right hand side. So I'm left with 100 minus x equals 30 minus 10. That's going to give me 20, and then I have 100 minus x. Now we don't want to have that minus x. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to move the x to this side, and I'm going to bring the 20 across to this side. And I'm going to subtract. So that means x equals 80. And if I substitute 8 for x, I'm going to get 100 and minus 80, and I get 20, and 20 plus 10 does give me 30, so x does have a value of 80. I think in this one you can do all on your own by now. I'm going to write out the question as usual. I'm going to take the 20 to the other side to isolate the x, so I've got 40 minus 20, and 40 minus 20 is 20, so x equals 20, and if I substitute 20 for x, 20 plus 20 does equal 40, and the left hand side does equal the right hand side. I'm going to rewrite the question as I normally do. And I'm going to isolate the x. I'm going to bring the 3 to this side, making it negative, and I'm going to take the minus 3 to this side, making it positive. So I'm left with 12 minus 3 equals 3x. So I'm going to subtract, and I'm going to get 9 equals 3x. And what you do to the left, you do to the right. So I'm choosing to divide by 3 because I'm trying to get rid of the 3. So I'm going to divide this side by 3. 9 divided by 3 is 3, and 3 goes into 3 once, so that just leaves me with x. So x is equal to 3. And if I put it in here and I substitute, this over here comes to 9. 12 minus 9 is 3. I'm hoping that this tutorial helped you and that you manage these questions in the future. Keep watching out for my videos. Cheers and have a great day.